And, I think the other element of this project is the innovation part.
Yeah.
So we're solving a problem with an innovative solution, and it's actually one that is new in California relatively. So we will be one of the first indirect potable reuse projects by way of reservoir augmentation in California.
Yeah.
And that's exciting as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Short on local water supplies and long on regulatory requirements. Do a deep dive with us by listening to the Full Circle podcast to learn how Las Virgenes Municipal Water District and the Triunfo Water and Sanitation District are meeting 21st century water supply challenges for a portion of the Los Angeles and Ventura County regions.
Hello, good day, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Full Circle podcast. I am Riki Clark, your host, where we talk about all things Pure Water Project Las Virgenes Triunfo. And today, my guest needs absolutely no introduction, but what kind of host would I be without introducing him? Dave Pedersen, our GM. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Riki. Glad to be back with you.
Yes. Dave has been GM here at Las Virgenes for a little over 11 years or 12 now?
Almost 12 years.
Almost 12 years. Been here for a while. Has lots and lots of skin in the game. Now current past president of Water Reuse California. And also the administering agent for the JPA. Yes.
Yes.
We're super excited to have you on. We had Dave on actually last season along with Glenn Pedersen to talk about kind of the history of the region as well as the importance of local water, why we don't have any local water, and why that paved the way for the Pure Water Project. And today we're going to kind of further that discussion and kind of keep the ball rolling with the importance of local water and really the value of local water. And we know now, after waxing poetic about it for so many episodes, that the big draw for the Pure Water Project is not just watershed protection and satisfying those regulatory needs, but also bringing a new local supply of water to the region where we do not currently have one. So very exciting stuff. Last episode, we got into some numbers with Don. We got into some really technical aspects of progressive design build with Oliver and Michelle. Today, we're not going to be as technical. I really want to pick your brain, Dave, and see how you feel, how you really feel about the Pure Water Project and its value to the region. So first things first, what excites you about the Pure Water Project? You personally, like as a human and then as a general manager?
So I'll just start by saying there's a lot of things that excite me about the project, but I think what is most amazing about it is seeing it evolve from its very beginning to a time when the district was mired in conflict, and to develop a proposal that was really driven by the community and by stakeholders to solve a problem and do it in an innovative way. And just to see the power of people working together, sharing ideas to develop a solution that we really weren't thinking about at the time, and to have it be so successful. That is exciting to me. And I'll share in my career, there are a few times where I've seen something so special happen.
Yeah.
And it just makes me realize that it's possible when you bring the right people together and you have common goals, that you can solve really difficult problems and do it in a way that meets everybody's needs. And that's really what this project is about. So when you think back probably 10 years, we were engaged in a lot of conflict over addressing some of our challenges in the watershed.
Sure.
We had not fully realized some of the difficulties we would face on the water supply side. And so we developed a solution that was largely focused on addressing our water quality standards, but also realizing local water was important.
Right. Those drought impacts, though, weren't as tangible, right, and real as they are today.
Right. So we knew that they were, drought was a vulnerability we had.
Sure.
But we had not been through the severe drought. We had not been through 2 severe droughts.
Right, at that time.
And so those came, and the project really just came to life in that the benefits of developing a local drought-resilient supply of water really became so evident.
You mentioned that the Pure Water Project really wasn't thought of at that time. was it that drought? I think it was like 2014, 2015, 2016, maybe 2015ish. Was it that drought that was kind of the impetus to considering the Pure Water project, or can you kind of put your finger on what it was specifically?
So originally the project, I would say it goes back even further, 2013, and it was really driven a lot around the regulatory standards for the creek.
Sure.
And then we came into a time of drought beginning about 2013 through about 2016. And that kind of illustrated the importance of developing local water for us. And so the two kind of happened about the same time.
Okay. Good to know. So, like, if you can step outside of your shoes as a GM, which I'm sure might be kind of hard at this point because this is like such a big part of your life. Aside from the problem solving, right? Also step outside of like being an engineer. What's been the most exciting thing about the Pure Water project? Maybe like the collaboration. I know you mentioned that, but can you kind of speak to that a little bit more?
I think just seeing the ownership that all of the people who work on it have developed around the project.
Yeah.
That is exciting because having seen it come from a time where it was just an idea and we were not clear on all the elements of the project and how it would work. And then seeing that develop over time and seeing the people working on it really take ownership, believe in it, and believe in the importance of it, and to start to tackle some of the challenges around making it work. That was exciting.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be exciting to really, I think once the facility is up and we're actually producing water, I mean, I can't imagine how exciting that it's going to be, especially for someone like you, an engineer who's so problem solving forward. And you guys love a challenge. You guys love being able to say, here's the problem, here's the process, and here's how we solved it. So I'm sure that's going to be really rewarding.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, as engineers, like by nature, we like solving problems.
Yeah.
We frequently think we have the answers.
Yes.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes they're not the right answers.
In this situation, it's the right answer. We've done a lot of research, a lot of collaboration.
Right. And, you know, I think the other element of this project is the innovation part.
Yeah.
So we're solving a problem with an innovative solution, and it's actually one that is new in California relatively. So we will be one of the first indirect potable reuse projects by way of reservoir augmentation in California.
Yeah.
And that's exciting as well.
Yeah, 100%. So our service area is pretty small, right? Can you talk about how the Pure Water project is going to provide more regional benefits, maybe outside of our small little, pocket of the world?
Absolutely. So just by the nature of our Joint Powers Authority having a partner in the Triumphal Water and Sanitation District, and that partner being in Ventura County, it opens a lot of opportunities for broader partnerships. I think about partnerships with Callegas as our neighbor, partnerships with Los Angeles. I think the Pure Water project has really reframed the way we look at how we manage water and looking broader and not looking just at our immediate neighbors, but even the neighbors of our neighbors and beyond, and realizing that water is something that we need to look at much more broadly.
Right. So obviously we're collaborating with Triunfo through the JPA on this project. We've talked about this in prior episodes about how we'll be collaborating with Callegas as we'll be adjoining to their salinity management pipeline. That's going to take the brine out to Port Hueneme for disposal. Can you kind of tap into the partnership with Los Angeles a bit?
Sure. So there's a couple partnerships that we have with Los Angeles. Number one is Los Angeles and Las Virgenes. We have an interconnection, and so when there are major shutdowns on the Metropolitan system, we are supplied with water through the Los Angeles system.
Right,
LADWP.
and just for clarification, we're talking about LADWP.
Right. So when Metropolitan takes their Jensen water treatment plant out of service, and they do that generally once a year, LADWP will supply us with water. We have an interconnection at a place called Kittredge, and that's where we receive our water supply. We are also working on a regional partnership with 8 other water agencies looking at deep water ocean desalination, and LADWP is one of the partners that's exploring that with us.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different initiatives that we have with them. Can you also talk about kind of how the Pure Water Project helps with our kind of water equity throughout the state, right? Because if we're taking less water, if we're importing less water, how does that affect other people throughout the state?
Right. So because we lack local water, all of our water right now is imported. The majority of it is coming from the State Water Project and from the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. And so there are a lot of different interests that are receiving water through the Delta. In fact, a large portion of California, probably more than half of California. Because of that, and because of the times of drought and shortage on the State Water Project, there's limited supply. And so as we develop more local resilience, that means that that supply during times of shortage can go further to help other communities that are reliant on imported water.
Right. And as a whole, as a state, we have such limited amounts of water available at any given time, especially in times of drought. So any water that can be freed up for communities that maybe can't embark on something like this, or they also struggle with that, with having no local water, I mean, that's a big deal. It might seem small, but in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty impactful.
It is.
All right, so I mentioned earlier that we had Don on the podcast previously to talk all things numbers with the new updated project costs for pure water. Can you share kind of your first thoughts or feelings when seeing that current updated price tag?
Yeah, I'll just share I was shocked, like most. And I'll tell you, on the project, the cost has evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall the very first estimate on the project, and I remember each time when we had an updated estimate, and it's been challenging.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember I was on vacation on one of those updates when I got the updated project cost, and I got that phone call and I got the updated number, and it really shocked me.
Did it ruin your vacation, Dave?
It didn't ruin my vacation, but I had trouble not thinking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the nature of the environment that we're working in, is
Sure.
that we're seeing costs increase at a rate that even exceeds inflation for
Yeah.
construction.
Yeah.
So it's challenging. But I think what has helped us to keep that in perspective is what we've done is looked at financing opportunities and how do we fund and finance these projects and do that over time, realizing that what we are doing is making an investment which is really for a period of 30 to 40 years.
Right.
And so that although the cost does seem large, we're developing a benefit for our customers that will last for a generation.
And that's invaluable.
And it's invaluable.
Yeah.
And we're also in a time now where we have more state and federal funding to support our projects than ever before.
Yeah.
So although on the cost side it's been challenging, I think that there's a lot of headwinds in that area. There's also tailwinds in terms of funding and
Sure.
funding availability.
Yeah, and we have a more than qualified team, a finance team that's been pursuing those opportunities to the tune of about $300 million at this point. And for the record, that project cost is about $464 million right now. I think the last one before that was about 362. Do you remember what the first estimate was?
It was less than 100 million.
Oh, was it really? I thought it was like 124. Maybe that wasn't even the first one. Yeah. But, you know, we've talked about this ad nauseum, especially with Don. Like, the price is going up across the board.
Yeah, and it's not just that, too. Is when you first conceive a project, you don't know all of the things that you don't know.
Sure.
And so as a project concept and the strategies develop, you start to really understand better all of the elements of the project. And so there are pieces that you just didn't know you needed to do when you first came up with a project concept. So it's not all escalation. Some of it is defining the scope of the project better, understanding all the elements and what is needed.
That's a good point. And I think in the episode where we had Michelle Green and Oliver Slosser, they kind of talked about the role that progressive design build plays in kind of staying flexible, but also giving you some foresight to what the costs are going to be to allow for better preparation. And I think that that's been invaluable with the planning process as well.
Absolutely.
So because this number has grown so much and, you know, 464 million is nothing to shirk at, it's easy to get caught up in those numbers without considering the alternative or the alternatives. Can you kind of talk about the costs that would be incurred without embarking on a project like this?
So that's a really interesting question for our project because of the regulatory element of our project.
Right.
So a portion of our project is really driven by regulatory compliance. So we don't really have a no project alternative. So we have to build a project.
Yeah.
Even if we were to be comfortable with the status quo as far as our water supply and its reliability, we still needed to deal with the challenge with discharging our treated wastewater into Malibu Creek and improving the quality of that treated water. And so we were faced with making an investment that was almost at the same level, only to discharge that water into the creek and lose it to the Santa Monica Bay, to the ocean. And so
hundreds of millions just to throw water away.
yeah,
Let's put that in context.
absolutely.
Drinking
So
water.
hundreds of millions of dollars to treat water to better than drinking water standards,
Right.
only to release it into the creek and ultimately to the ocean and really derive no benefit. And so then you think about if we were able to do the same and capture that water and make a new source of drinking water, you think that the incremental additional cost is almost nothing.
Yeah.
And it starts to illustrate the economics of the project, that it makes sense, is we're developing a benefit where we would otherwise not.
Right. So it's really not just monetary costs. I mean, regulatory, consequences end up in monetary costs, but it's a lot more than that, right? Can you kind of, and some of our listeners and viewers are actually pretty well aware of this already, because I've been able to talk to some of you out in the community and we've been getting questions. But can you kind of touch on Metropolitan's rising rates and how that water is going to continue to get more expensive if we are 100% reliant on it?
Right, and I think that's an important consideration. So the cost of imported water, and Metropolitan is our imported water supplier for all of Southern California, they are facing the same cost pressures, maybe even greater than we are. So the cost of imported water is going up, and it's outpacing also inflation. So right now we're seeing water rates going up in I would say the 8 to 12% range.
Yeah.
And it partly depends on what type of water you're buying, treated, untreated, full service water.
And we buy treated water, right?
We buy
Do we buy
entirely
any
treated
untreated?
water. We don't buy
Okay.
untreated water.
Okay.
So our rates are going up probably in the neighborhood of 12% per year.
Wow.
If you look forward and you look at the future, I anticipate that is not going to be unusual for the future. So we are going to see potentially double-digit rate increases, in my opinion, going forward in the coming years.
Wow.
And then you look at the cost of pure water, and although currently the unit cost of pure water is higher than imported water,
Sure.
there will be a point in time where we will be able to produce pure water at a lower cost than buying imported water.
What do you think that time frame looks like?
I wish I knew. I really wish I knew. I think it's going to be sooner than we think.
Yeah.
So when we did the financial model, the crossover point, as we call it, and so what we're talking about is the crossover between when the cost of pure water drops to be less than the cost, or intersects the cost of imported water.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 10 years out. I think that's probably still a reasonable
Okay.
expectation.
I don't know why. In my head, I was thinking 20, but that's even better.
I think it will come sooner.
Yeah, I think our customers will be happy to hear that too. And when you're talking about Metropolitan rate increases, is that a direct pass down to our customers? Like if it were 12% for the district's rates, is that going to also be 12% directly reflected on their bills as well, or on their rates?
No, it's not a one-to-one.
Right.
So when Metropolitan rates go up, for example, 12%, our rates don't necessarily go up 12%. In fact, they usually will go up less. And
Okay.
the reason is that our cost profile, a portion of it, a large portion of it, is Metropolitan purchases. But then there's also a lot of other costs that we have that are driven by other factors.
Sure.
And so we can tend to offset some of that cost increase by controlling costs in other areas, but there's limits to what we can do.
Sure. So all that to say, it's safe to say that the project is still affordable than any alternative, including just continuing to be 100% reliant on imported water, or it will be at one point.
I absolutely think so. And I think it's interesting the word you used, affordable. I think, and that's kind of a buzzword now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody has a little bit different definition of what affordable means. And I'll also add that it's really, affordable is really a decision the customer makes. But
That's a good point.
I think the important point is affordable is really all about what the cost is at the consumer. And so we have to look at putting these numbers in perspective for the end customer. And I think frequently we look at only part of the equation. So we look at the cost of imported water and how much it's going up by. But unless we put those numbers in context for the customer, it's not really meaningful to them about, is my water still affordable or not?
Right, because they're just looking at the increase and they're like, this is not getting affordable.
Right. This is too much. So I think one of the lessons learned that we had in the process when our project cost went up is each time we took those numbers and we translated them into what would be the bill impact. What would be the impact on a customer's bill, the average customer's bill? And what we did by doing that is really put the number in context for the consumer so that they could tell, how will this affect me on a monthly basis in the future?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's that kind of information and the awareness on our customer ahead of the project, that's invaluable. Definitely something we want to continue to focus on. Kind of continuing the conversation with our partnership with Metropolitan, they've been a really important project partner for the Pure Water Project. They're also embarking on their own Pure Water Project, a huge one. And they've actually assisted us with funding through their local resources program, their LRP. I've had some of our customers ask why they would support this project if we are technically a customer of theirs, and embarking on this project would mean that we're purchasing less water from them. Why are they still supporting this?
It's an interesting question. It seems counterintuitive, but it actually was a really strategic decision that Metropolitan made a couple decades ago, and that was that Metropolitan realized that the growth of Southern California was such that additional water supplies needed to be developed, and they looked at what are the different strategies to develop local supplies and how could it be done most cost effectively. And Metropolitan, I think showing a lot of foresight, realized that the member agencies like us and like our partners at Metropolitan can develop local resources in an economical way, and that Metropolitan can support that by providing a cost incentive for us to do that. And what they realized is that in developing some of these projects, we would be investing in projects that would cost more on a unit basis than just the status quo and continuing to buy water from Metropolitan. And so the rationale was that they would provide essentially the differential. And so they would provide an incentive that made up the difference in cost between investing in that higher cost water and the status quo of continuing to buy water from Metropolitan. And that drove several decades of investment in local water supplies that have really now helped stretch the region a lot further as both demand grew and as we saw the decline in the reliability of our imported water.
Right. Has there been, I mean, you talked about kind of the foresight and how beneficial it's been, especially to districts like ours or, you know, as a customer to Metropolitan. Has it impacted like business models at all? Is this something that's going to have to evolve as more projects like these start to pop up throughout the region?
It is. It is. In fact, it's one of the central issues among several that is being discussed at Metropolitan as part of what they call the business model refinement process. And so Metropolitan is doing a relook at their entire business model and looking at the way they develop the resources to invest in not only their imported water supplies, but developing local water supplies. And I think what is likely to come out is that Metropolitan is looking at potential change in how they invest in local projects.
Yeah, an evolution, if you will.
Yeah. And so they're looking at developing their own local supply through their Pure Water Southern California project, and probably also looking at how they go about investing in member agency projects. And I think what's likely to happen is it will be a change that will happen over time. It's not going to be an immediate change in policy, but I think it will be a shift in the way they go about making those investments over time.
Would you be able to assign like a positive or negative value to that change? Is it, I guess I'm asking, like, is it good that we are able to take advantage of what they are offering now as opposed to when that change happens?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all you have to say. Great, auspicious timing for a project like this for a lot of reasons. We've talked a little bit about the importance of diversifying our water supply portfolio. We talked about it a little bit today. We talked about it the last episode you joined us on. That's really one of our major talking points and really benefits of the Pure Water Project. If imported water continues to get more expensive, which you just explained that it will, do you foresee the JPA working to decrease our reliance on that imported water even more?
I do. And in fact, we're thinking ahead already towards that goal and really looking at having a more diversified water supply portfolio. Like you said, I always think of it like your investment portfolio and everything that we learned about your personal finances, that you don't want to invest all in one area,
Right.
Because there's a lot of risk. And so we have for a long time been heavily invested in imported water. And so we've experienced the effects of that risk. And during times of drought, we've felt the consequences. So pure water is one big step forward, and it will provide about 30% of our supply. But I do think there's more that we need to do. And we are already thinking ahead to what will come behind pure water and what will be the next investment.
In an ideal world, would we like to see imported water kind of being like the smallest piece of the pie, you think? Or I guess just the most expensive source, right?
I wouldn't say the smallest piece, and I think it will be smaller, but I think just more balanced. And I would say our portfolio is not real well balanced right now. So I think imported water will always be a really important part of our water supply in this area. And it's the nature of our service area, the challenges we face, the lack of local groundwater. So I don't think there'll be a time where imported water will not be critically important to us, but I think that we will be at a point where it will be a more balanced portfolio and that we will have other resources that we can lean on during times of shortage.
Which you referenced a little bit earlier, talking about OceanWell. Like, I know for the Pure Water Project, for this Full Circle podcast, we've been talking about the Pure Water Project. But I would be remiss not to kind of talk about what we're also exploring with OceanWell and deep sea desalination. Can you kind of give us like a high level introduction to, this next potential source that we're researching right now?
Sure. So we're looking at a variety of alternatives, but the one that's offering a lot of promise right now is deep ocean desalination. We have a public-private partnership with a company called OceanWell, and OceanWell is working on a proposal that would develop and install these pods that would be placed about 1,200 feet below the ocean surface, and that would produce purified seawater. And that would be conveyed to the shoreline, and then through a joint powers authority with multiple agencies participating, we'd move that water out to them, sharing the cost, and administer a project that would bring the benefits to those water purveyors.
And be sort of another local source of water, right?
Right.
Can you talk about what differentiates that type of desalination from traditional desal? I think the majority of our listeners and viewers know that desal in California has a lot of detractors and opposition to it because of its environmental impacts, the energy costs needed. So what's so special and innovative about this method of desal?
Right. So you hit the big challenges with conventional seawater desalination. Number one, the environmental concerns. Those concerns around the intakes and sea life, the brine disposal, and then, of course, the energy cost. So deep water ocean desal uses about 40% less energy.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that the column of ocean water is helping to serve as a driving pressure for the RO unit that helps to reduce the amount of energy that's needed. So in terms of the cost, a lot of the cost of desal is in the energy. So cost is lower. You're also, by not using as much energy, you're reducing the carbon footprint and sort of the greenhouse gas profile, which is otherwise fueling climate change and creating challenges for us.
Right.
And then on the ocean environment side, because the pod is placed in the deep ocean, it's a part of the ocean that has very little sea life. It's an area where sunlight is not reaching. And so because of that, you do not have the same kind of concerns with impingement and entrainment of sea life.
Yeah. So innovation, not just with water recycling, but also with desal. And I do just want to note that during the last drought that ended at 2022, 2023, our board made a promise to our customers that they, would go all in on researching different sources of water that we can pull from to make sure that we did everything that we could to not end up in the same, situation that we were in with water restrictions. And so although our partnership with OceanWell and this research into deep sea desalination isn't necessarily a part of the Pure Water Project, it's definitely satisfying, or at least making good on that promise. And so I think it's important to kind of talk about and shine some light about that. Our customers, our viewers, our listeners, they will be hearing a lot more about our partnership with OceanWell in the coming months. We have some really exciting things in the works. But until then, we're kind of plugging away at all things Pure Water Project, bringing a new local supply of water. We gave a bit of an update with where we're at with progressive design builds. We have the team on board. Meetings are underway, and we are getting that design started for a groundbreaking in hopefully early 2026, maybe even late 2025. So very, very exciting times here at the JPA. Dave, you're a wonderful guest, as usual.
Riki.
Of course, I know that this is like pie for you, but I really appreciate you coming on, making some time to wax poetic about all things Pure Water Project with us.
Thank you, Riki.
Thank you. And we will see you guys next time on the Full Circle podcast. Thanks.